पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Namaste. Welcome to the sixth session on Bhagavad Gita, your source of inspiration by Jayaji. Today, Jayaji will give an overview of chapter 9 of the Bhagavad Gita. I request her to begin with her discourse.
We'll begin with the invocation.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Chapter 9, one of the most fascinating chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. It is referred to as the royal secret. It's the highest and noblest knowledge, the absolute knowledge that illumines all other knowledge. So it is referred to as royal. It is also unknown to most people and therefore a secret. Atman is so profound and so subtle that it eludes the grasp of the common person. Yet it pervades the entire universe and exists beyond in its pristine glory. So, Krishna in verse 7 presents the macrocosmic view of the entire universe. Verse 7.
सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्।
O Kaunteya, all beings enter my Prakriti at the end of a kalpa, cosmic cycle. And at the beginning of another kalpa, I send them forth again. So a kalpa is one day of Lord Brahma. Brahma is not to be confused with Brahman. Lord Brahma is the god of creation, a personification of the phenomenon of one of the three components of the universe, that is creation, maintenance and destruction. So one day of Lord Brahma equals 1000 Mahayugas, and one Mahayuga consists of 4 yugas. Satya Yuga, 17,28,000 years. Treta Yuga, 12,96,000 years. Dwapara Yuga, 8,64,000 years. And Kali Yuga, 4,32,000 years. Kali Yuga is supposed to have begun on 18 February 3102 BC. So one kalpa is equal to 4.32 billion years. That is one day of Lord Brahma. If you observe, the Kali Yuga is the shortest because most people are selfish, destructive. So it lasts for the least time. And every other yuga after that is a multiple of the duration of Kali Yuga. Dwapara Yuga is double Kali Yuga. Treta Yuga is 3 times Kali Yuga. And Satya Yuga is 4 times Kali Yuga. Now, when you look at this, you understand the utter insignificance of yourself in the scheme of things. But in the midst of this, your business is just to do your obligation and get out of this mess as quickly as possible. Nothing else matters. So, moment to moment, perform your obligation, setting aside your likes and dislikes, setting aside your own desires, setting aside thought of self. So, you have the option of living as a plaything, puppet, going through the cycle of birth and death, getting tossed around at the mercy of the world. Or you can acquire knowledge of Atman to opt out of this cycle and gain freedom, moksha. What you want, what you choose, has its repercussions. So far, you have chosen the world and chosen to be a puppet. You are therefore meeting with the consequences. So don't complain. You only have to choose wisely and you will no longer be at the mercy of the world. Ignorant of their potential, the deluded ignore Atman and get caught up with the world, living in vain hopes, performing mindless activities, and acquiring superficial knowledge. They are bereft of discrimination. Krishna says in verse 12,
मोघाशामोघकर्माणः मोघज्ञानविचेतसः राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः.
of vain hopes, futile actions, hollow knowledge, devoid of discrimination. They are indeed possessed of the delusive nature of Rakshasas and Asuras. Rakshasas, Rajasic people, Asuras, Tamasic people. So in verse 11, Krishna has said that those who disregard and ignore the self, Atman, spirit, are fools. Here he substantiates it by describing their actions as driven by vain hopes, moghasha. Vain because they are against the main purpose of life, which is to attain enlightenment. Also vain because it is never ending. You never achieve the state of fulfillment by running after material things. You know, there is a story of a bachelor, young man doing extremely well in life, handsome, good looking, only child of his widowed mother. But he wasn't married. And his mother would keep telling him, Beta, get married, like most parents. But he had thought, he had looked at people who were married and seen their condition and said, I don't want to get into this mess. But there were times when he felt lonely and he felt the need for a companion. So one day he thought of a brilliant idea. He said, why not I go directly to God and ask him to select a bride for me? Then I'll get a perfect wife. My desire will be fulfilled. I'll live happily. So he decides to go to God. And it's a long journey there. Takes him a few months to get there. When he gets there, God looks at him and says, oh, to what do I owe this honor? You finally thought of me. So very sheepishly he says, no, God, I think of you often. But, and then God asks him, so what can I do for you? He says, God, you have been so kind to me. You've given me so much in life. All I want is just one thing. I want a bride. So God looks at him and says, you've come all this way. It's taken you so long. You've put in so much effort. Is this all you want? He says, yes, God, you've given me everything else. So God tells him, Why don't you sit here, relax, give it some thought, and if there's anything else you want, ask for it, I'll grant it immediately. So the young man sits and really gives it thought, but he can't think of anything beyond the wife. So he tells God, God, I've really given it thought, but I can't think of anything other than the wife. That's the only thing I want. So God says, Tathastu. And the young man comes back. By the time he comes back, his mother tells him, look, there is a proposal that has come and the girl is really outstanding. Why don't you take a look? And the mother is surprised because the boy immediately says yes, even without looking. Because his reasoning is, this is God's selection. I don't have to think any further. And he gets married. And as expected, she was a fabulous person, perfect wife, no nagging, no fighting, no demands, no expectations, nothing. Things went on smoothly. 2 years passed, 3 years passed, 5 years passed. Now you know what the problem is. No child. So the wife, being a practical lady, says, no problem, just go to God. But the man says, I feel a little hesitant to go back to God because God had asked me, if you want anything else, ask right now and I'll give it to you. She says, but that is the thing, na? God is forgiving. He won't hold it against you. Go. So he goes. This time God says, Are, you've come back so soon? So the young man says, um, God, your choice was perfect. She's a wonderful person. I'm very happy in marriage. Then what is the problem? God says, it's been 5 years since we got married and we don't have a child. Oh, that's all that you want. That has to, says God. But then he makes him sit down and think even more. He says, make sure that that is the only thing you want. So he sits and gives it very serious thought. But again, he can't think of anything beyond the child. So he comes back. By the time he comes back, I told you it takes a while to go and come. The wife has announced, we are going to be parents. And there's jubilation, there's excitement, there's complete happiness. And the child is born. A boy. Lovely boy. Exactly what they could have asked for. A few months pass, and the wife calls him in utter panic and says, the child can't hear. And now they are devastated. The wife quickly says, Are, please go back to God and tell him to at least make him hear. That is natural, no? The husband thinks for a while and says, puts his foot down and says, no, I am not going. So she says, no, please go. He says, I am not going, not because I'm afraid to go and admit to God that I should have thought of this earlier, but I'm not going because I have finally understood that I don't know what I want. So this is it, friends. This is a very important thing that you and I should think of, and that is, in life, happiness seems to be just around the corner. We all suffer from the JATC syndrome, just around the corner. So when you're single, marriage is all that you can think of. You can't think of anything else that you want. The moment you get married, your happiness shifts to something else. Child, home, car, increased income, vacation abroad, something or the other. That gets fulfilled, your happiness shifts one step further. So it's always beyond your grasp. It's always lying in the future. In the present, you are discontent, unhappy for some reason or the other. Therefore, he says, vain actions. And this goes on throughout your life, life after life. for countless lives together. But nobody thinks. And that is the problem. Mogha karmana. Moghasha, you're driven by vain hopes. Mogha karmana, futile actions. Why futile? Because they are selfish, greedy. Your vision is limited. You have a myopic vision of just me, I, me, myself. So, and all your actions are directed towards that. Now, you can't achieve greatness with a small mind. With petty mindedness, you can't achieve great things. You've got to expand your mind and include the well being of as many people as possible, as large a canvas as possible. Only then you'll achieve greatness. So, there's a story of a man who goes to Krishna's devotee, and says, I've done everything good. I've been a good devotee. I've followed all the Vedas and injunctions in the Vedas. So all I want is to go to heaven. So Krishna sends him to the first heaven. He goes there, enjoys for a while, then he's unhappy. He says, this is on the bottommost heaven. I want to go one step higher. So second heaven, third heaven, there are supposed to be 7 heavens. Seventh heaven he is transported to by Krishna. He still wants more. So poof, he comes back to earth. Because his wanting never stops. Infinite greed leads to infinite misery. These are futile actions because they generate more and more desires. They commit you to more and more lives, more and more misery in the world. And all this springs from Mogha Jnana. Your knowledge is hollow. Why? You only have knowledge of the world. You have knowledge of external objects. You have no knowledge of yourself. Forget knowledge of Atman. You don't even know what's happening in your mind, what makes your intellect function, what are the desires that are driving you to activity, what is your inner personality like. Even that you don't know. And of course, you don't know Atman. It's like getting a PhD in the dream. Of what use is it in the waking state? So you take a look at all your activities in the world and view it as achievements in the dream, including Richard Branson, who has gone on a spacecraft. And there was bitter competition between him and the other guy about who's going to go first. All that, the greatest of achievements, boils down to just a PhD in the dream. Vichetasaha. And all this is driven by senseless discrimination. There is no discrimination. Because you're ignorant of the infinite bliss that lies within. Everything you do thereafter makes no sense. It's like, there was a young boy who fought with his father and left home and didn't come back for many, many years. In the interim, the father made a lot of money, became one of the richest guys, but he died. And the son didn't even know. The son comes back in tatters. He's in a bad condition and goes to one of his father's friends, who's the chairman of a bank, and says, Uncle, you were good friends with dad. You are good friends with dad. Please give me a job. The chairman of the bank looks at him with amusement and says, Beta, you have no idea. You can give me a job. So the young boy doesn't understand what this man is saying. Then the father's friend tells him the whole story, that your father made a lot of money, was very successful after you left, and he's left his entire fortune to you because you were his only son, and he's gone. he finds it difficult to accept it. First of all, that his father is dead and that he has so much money. Now, what makes him miserable? What makes him go begging for a job? Ignorance of his fortune. Similarly, here you and I are ignorant of the infinity that lies within us, infinite bliss, infinite power, infinite total fulfillment. And therefore, we're going out into the world as beggars. We're begging for money, we're asking for relationships, we're asking for all kinds of things. All we need is knowledge of the self. Therefore, it is that knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita is so important. In ancient times, children were sent to Gurukuls after the age of 7 to study, and they studied there till they were like in their early 20s. And apart from other subjects which were worldly, they learned this knowledge of the self. So when they emerged from the Gurukul, they were masters in command of their own personality. That is why India reached heights of material development, the golden era, which lasted for a long time. It's when we lost our spiritual heritage that we lost everything else. So, external riches come as a result of internal enrichment. First, enrich yourself from within. And it's common sense. When you develop a sharp intellect, you have good emotions, wonderful emotions that help you establish great relationships with people. You have complete control over yourself, over your sense contact, and the whims and fancies of the mind. There's nothing holding you back. This is all the knowledge that you need, in fact. You don't need any worldly knowledge because you can always hire people. You don't have knowledge of the legal system, you can hire a lawyer. You don't have knowledge of medicine, you go to a doctor, pay his fees. You don't have knowledge of accountancy, you hire a chartered accountant. But when you don't have control over yourself, this cannot be outsourced. You can't hire a guru to take care of your personality. A guru can only give you knowledge. Wisdom is something you need to develop. Take in the knowledge, work on it, and develop the wisdom. So, Rakshasas, Rajasic people are greedy. Asuras, Tamasic people go one step further. They are cruel to get what they want. So, but in the end, if you are a good person, Sukrutinaha, doer of good, then you are saved. It's like during the Samudra Manthan, when the gods and the demons got together for the project of extracting Amrita from the ocean. Milky white ocean, sattvic mind. Their agreement was that they would share the Amrita. But the gods got to it first and ran away with it. So, Vishnu appears as the tantalizing Mohini who dances and lures the asuras away, and the gods managed to get the Amrita. So, self-control is very, very important. The strength of the intellect is very, very important. Then he says, the Mahatmas, great souls, anchored in the divine, worship God single-pointedly. Bhajanti ananya manasaha with no other thought. They dedicate all their actions to the achievement of the self. Karma Yoga. They sing the Lord's name always, redirecting their love towards God. Bhakti Yoga. They are firm in resolve, determined in their pursuit till the goal is attained. Jnana Yoga. Focus. They align the head and heart with the truth. Such great souls constantly yearn for liberation. So, this aligning the head and heart is namasyanta, dissolving your ego, doing sashtang namaskar, where your head and heart are in line with the feet of the deity or the guru. Such people gain knowledge of Atman as the one, Advaita, as separate, Dvaita. Advaita is the intellectual pursuit where you understand the world as an illusion and you are looking for or you achieve Atman as reality. So there is only one. If you think there is a second, it's got to be an illusion, says Swami Ramatirtha. But the bhakta views the same things differently. He needs an idol, a symbol of God that he pours his heart out to, his emotions to. So he needs that duality. Ultimately, he reaches the same state, oneness with God. But the approach is slightly different. Which is why when Hanuman was asked, Hanuman, the greatest devotee, was asked, what is your relationship with Rama? He says, Deha bhavena dasosmi. When I look at my body, I am your servant. Jiva bhave tvadamshaka. When I consider my inner personality, the mind and the intellect, I am a part of you. But Atma bhave tvamevaham. When I consider Atman, you and I are one. So all of them are the same. It's the angle of vision that is different. In other words, all paths lead to the same goal. This Catholicity, broad-mindedness, pervades Vedanta, the Indian culture, right through. Thus, worship is a constant effort at union with Atman. It's not a casual prayer that you repeat hurriedly every morning before you go to work. It's not an occasional prayer when you get into trouble, we think of God. Pray for solace. It's not a once in a year ritual that you perform. It is a constant attunement, constant alignment, constant thought of the higher. This constancy has to be there because the law is as you think, so you become. Knowledge. What kind of knowledge do you need? Not of books, not intellectual brilliance, but of oneness. When you see the fan and its movement, a heater and the heat that it generates, an air conditioner and the pleasantness that it creates, a refrigerator and the benefits that it bestows, as nothing but electricity functioning. Then you don't get carried away. You don't see differences. You see them all as electrical gadgets. Similarly, wherever you see oneness, you see yourself. For instance, you feel one with the family, you see yourself in all the family members, but each one is different, distinct. They have their unique pluses and minuses, unique personality. You see the differences, but there is this underlying feeling of oneness, which is what is overriding all other differences. So you're able to take everything in your stride. You see the good in everything. Your daughter may be full of life, intelligent, active, but horribly disorganized. Your son may be organized, but quiet. Your spouse has his or her pluses and minuses. You see them all as one. You see fuel as the driving force in all vehicles. So whether it is a two-wheeler, an auto rickshaw, small car, a luxury car, or a powerful vehicle, they are all powered by the same fuel. Within India, you see a Kashmiri, you see a Tamilian, you see a Gujarati, a Bengali, a Maharashtrian. They are all different. And each one has their unique pluses and minuses, their unique culture. Everything is so different in our country. Every 100 kilometers you go, things change slightly. The food changes, customs change, but you revel in the differences. When you go from Mumbai to Kolkata, it's a different world almost, but you enjoy it because the underlying feeling is that of oneness. You go to Delhi, you enjoy the way they are. You go to Chennai, you enjoy their characteristics. And it's a wonderful world. In India, we have this diversity, we have these differences, we have this fantastic union of so many differences, yet the culture is the same and you enjoy it. You go to the United States, it's so boring. Wherever you go, it is the same KFC, the same McDonald's, everywhere it's the same. So the Kenopanishad says, Bhuteshu Bhuteshu Vichitya Dhira Pretyasma Lokad Amrita Bhavanti. In every element, every experience, having reflected, the wise rising above this world gain immortality. That gives you a deep sense of peace. So you don't even have to wait till you get to that state. As you rise, as your sphere of oneness expands, you experience this peace within. Object by object, experience by experience. You must rise above differences and see oneness. That is the point. And now we move to the very center of the entire Bhagavad Gita. It's an important verse, verse 22.
अनन्याश्चिन्तयन्तो माम् ये जना पर्युपासते तेषां नित्याभियुक्तानां योगक्षेमं वहाम्यहम्.
Krishna assures all those who worship God with, he says, I bestow yoga, spiritual enlightenment, and kshema, material success, to those persons who worship me with no other thought. Ananya Chintan. To those always seeking union. So, what you have to do is worship God with singular purpose, always seeking union. And Krishna then assures us of both spiritual enlightenment, yoga, as well as kshema, material prosperity. The Bhagavad Gita does not promise a vague post-mortem happiness. Its benefits can be reaped here and now to gain, firstly, material prosperity externally, happiness internally, and spiritual growth. The accent is on consistency of purpose and depth of feeling. Pursue your goal constantly and devotedly, and you will achieve it. They don't ask for qualifications. Nobody is disqualified. Everyone is included. And it's such an empowering thought, such an encouraging verse that doesn't matter how bad you are, you develop this constancy of thought, and you will get there. So the law is, as we saw earlier, as you think, so you become. You get what you want. Those who want only sense enjoyment get that. Devas. So those who worship the devas go to the devas. Yes, they get sense enjoyment, but later they are a spent force. Because the more you indulge indiscriminately, the less the joy content you derive, until you get to a state where or any successive contact with the sense object gives you zero enjoyment because you have indulged indiscriminately in it. But you have to maintain the contact because not having it gives you displeasure. This is what makes for depression. And this is a disease of the affluent. The poor are protected because they don't have the means to access the sense objects. So, this is a dead end. Then there are those who value culture and tradition. They worship the Pitrus. They become well-mannered. They pick up certain mannerisms. They become refined individuals. But that's it. Worshippers of the Bhutas, science, research and development, get that. But as Swami Ramatirtha said, iron and gold can get you only iron and gold, not happiness. You want happiness, you have to make a right about turn and worship what? Me. Me means Atman. Those who worship me come to me. They get moksha, they get freedom, and they get everything else. So it's a win-win situation. You get the world and you get the beyond. In verse 26, Krishna says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati. Let's see, verse 26.
Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyuparutam ashnami prayatatmanaha.
Whoever offers me a leaf, flower, fruit, or water with devotion, I accept that devout offering of the diligent seeker. So, what is he talking about? Simple offerings that anybody can get. So, it is not what you do, what you give that matters, but how you do it. It is the bhavana that counts, the spirit behind it, the motivation that is driving you. Let's take an example. Your 5-year-old son, a few days before your birthday, comes to you and asks for 500 rupees. And you are busy with your work, and you casually ask him, why do you want 500? And he says, oh, the teacher asked us to get to school. And you give it. You forget about it. Few days, what he does with it is, he goes with the driver or the servant or somebody to a shop and buys something for you with that 500. Gift wraps it because he buys the wrapping paper. All this he does with whose money? Your money. The gift that he buys you is something that is not useful to you. The wrapping paper is, with the wrapping paper, he wraps the gift in an imperfect manner. But on your birthday, early in the morning, he rushes into your room, wakes you up and says, happy birthday, Papa. You are so touched and moved by this gesture that you savor the gift that he's given. You keep it in the same wrapping paper for years together till he grows into an adult. Why? It is not the gift that he's bought. Does it make sense? He's taken money from you and bought a gift for you and gives it back to you. So if you look at it from one perspective, it doesn't make sense. But it's the feeling behind it that you remember forever. Similarly, friends, what are you doing? Even if you pluck a leaf or flower or fruit from the garden, whose leaf, flower or fruit is it? It is God's. It's God's garden. And water, of course, belongs to God. But the key word here is with devotion, bhaktya. That makes all the difference. So, when Sudama had to go and meet Krishna, his wife sent him on a mission to ask. This asking was not in his genes. Only giving was in his genes. Plus, he was meeting his dear friend, Krishna. So he tells his wife, how can I go empty-handed? Now, they have nothing, so the wife borrows a handful of poha from the neighbor and cooks it. So this handful he takes in a little bag and goes to meet Krishna. And when he goes there, he sees the grandeur of the palace that Krishna is living in, and he feels very ashamed to take it out and give it. It is Krishna who says, Sudama, haven't you brought anything for me? And you feel this guy is sitting in a palace and he's still asking Sudama. But Sudama then very sheepishly, because Krishna knows that there is no way that Sudama would come empty-handed, takes out that handful of poha and gives it to Krishna, and Krishna eats it with relish. The result of this giving is he goes back, he sees his humble hut converted into a magnificent mansion. His wife and kids are in fabulous clothes, jewelry and all that. He knows his obligation to the family is taken care of. And he proceeds to realization. So in giving the handful of poha, poha represents beaten rice. It's the remnants of your last vasanas. When you hand over that to the Lord, you have no more impurities. You reach the state of enlightenment. But you must give. And you must want to give. And there must be that wholeheartedness in the giving. Same thing with Shabari and how she gave. There is a bhajan in Marathi which says, I am not Janaki the Rajkumari, not the princess. I am a poor, mad tribal woman. All I want is to surrender at your feet. That is my purepana, that is my fulfillment. What a beautiful concept. So she looks around and she hears that Rama is passing by. She wants to give everything, but what she has nothing. So she looks around and she finds berries. She plucks those berries. And then she thinks, what if a berry is not sweet? How can I give a berry that is not sweet to the Lord? And there's only one way of knowing whether it is sweet or not, tasting it. She does a thing that is completely unacceptable in the Indian tradition. Jutha you never give to anybody. Leave alone to the Lord. But she does it. And the amazing part is, Rama accepts this devout offering of the diligent seeker. So this is it. And in this, she reaches realization. So there are two important things here. Bhaktya, devotion, prayatna, effort. Krishna doesn't see what you give. He only sees the bhakti and the effort. It is the bhakti and the prayatna that make a difference. Are you putting in that? Do you have that in you? Is the question. Develop that. And you can't develop it for the Lord unless you are particular about your everyday work. You make a cup of tea for a family member. How do you do it? It must be wholehearted. You do your work in the office. It must be complete, wholehearted. And any mistake you make must make you feel wretched. But here we are quite happy with the mistakes. We justify it. And we get upset when our mistakes are pointed out. Then there is no hope for you. There is no hope of spirituality for a person who can't do ordinary things perfectly. Not perfectly, at least wholeheartedly. Then he says, whatever action you perform, whatever you perceive, whatever you offer, whatever you give or strive for, do it as an arpanam, offering to me. This is how every mundane action is converted to worship. That Eric Liddell in the movie, the movie is based on a real life thing, in Chariots of Fire. He's just an ordinary Scottish guy. But he realizes that he has the talent to run. He also understands that this ability to run has been gifted to him by God, it's not his. So he says, God made me to run and I will run for God. So he is completely stress free. He doesn't bother about whether he's going to come first or last. And in the 400-meter race that he runs in the Olympics, he eventually gets to the Olympics, but he doesn't have a coach, he doesn't have fancy shoes, he doesn't have any. In fact, his shoes are what he picked up from a garbage bin. Two dissimilar shoes. One is larger and one is the correct size. This is the manner in which he goes to the Olympics and wins. He sets a record that is not broken for years after that. What powers this man is this attitude. Whatever you do it as an arpanam to God, offering to God. So his running is a mundane action, is converted to worship by him. This every one of us can do. So it is not the action that is worshipful. It is your attitude that makes it worship. Then you will be freed from the bondage of actions that yield good and bad results. What a fabulous thought that you can go home with and put it into action straight away. Whatever you do, you're sending an email to somebody, do it as an offering to God. Then how will you do it? Perfectly, there will be no typos. If there are typos, it means you don't have this attitude. A child can have this. A handicapped person can have it. The most brilliant person may not have it. So it has nothing to do with your talent or ability. Because this Eric Liddell used to say, I run the first 200 meters as fast as I can. The other 200 meters, God enables me to run. What a thought. So then he says, Krishna accepts, God accepts even the most wicked people, those who are rajasic, passionate, and tamasic, lethargic, and offers them liberation. So nobody is disqualified. It's not like medical college where you have to meet with you have to pass the qualifying test. It's not like IIT where you have to pass the JEE. It's not like IIM where you have to meet with certain requirements. Everybody is included. Nobody is disqualified, provided you choose correctly. And that choice also, everyone is capable of doing. Everyone has access to the supreme goal, to the spirit, because you are the spirit. The highly refined and spiritually evolved ones find it much easier to get there. That's all the difference. With a serene, calm, unagitated mind and a sharp intellect, such people understand the nature of the world as anitya, impermanent. Everything in the world, the most valuable or trash, garbage, has one thing in common. Everything in the world is there in the present, will go. That is one thing you are assured of. Everything that there is impermanent. So we are in the middle of a COVID crisis. one thing you're guaranteed is it will get over sometime. When? How? A lot of it depends on us. What precautions you take, what you do, your little bit to make sure that it goes as quickly as possible. So, anitya and asukham, joyless, there is no happiness in the world. Happiness lies inside you. Such people, they know they are heir to true and abiding bliss. All they have to do is look for it in the right place. Which is the right place? Within. Krishna ends this most inspiring chapter by encapsulating the entire spiritual path in one verse. Verse 34.
मन्मना भव मद्भक्तः मद्याजी मां नमस्कुरु मामे वैश्यसि युक्त्वैवम् आत्मानं मत्परायणः.
Fix your mind in me. Manmana. Bhava madbhaktaha. Become my devotee. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. Sacrifice to me, prostrate to me. Having united yourself to me, with me as the supreme goal, you shall come to me. This is a fabulous assurance given by Krishna. But there is the proviso, provided you do all these things. What are the things that you need to do? First, fix your mind on me, jnana yoga. Your intellect must fix the goal of self-realization, or as we've seen earlier, some higher goal, something beyond your selfish, self-centered interests, if you can't visualize Atman. The intellect fixes the goal, and constantly, here he's talking about realization, so you fix realization as the goal, and the intellect is constantly discriminating between the real and the unreal, the permanent and the passing, the eternal and the ephemeral. And that which is unreal, that which is passing, that which is not permanent, it discards, because as he says in chapter 5, Nateshu ramate buddhaha. The wise don't revel in these passing things. Then he says, be my devotee. Bhakti yoga. Feel for the ideal. Pour your heart out to God, which begins with gratitude. Gratitude for all that you have received in life. Don't take things for granted. Just because things have come to you unsought, unsolicited, for free, and in abundance, does not mean they have no value. Simple thing like you're breathing oxygen has value. Those who are COVID patients and are on ventilators understand this. Feel for the ideal. It must be important to you. It must be sacred to you, whatever it is that you're doing, your goal. Surrender helps calm the mind. It empowers you to go through the ordeals that the world has in store for you. Then he says, sacrifice to me, karma yoga. Sweat, toil, work hard. Dedicate your actions to the goal that you have fixed for yourself. Then prostrate to me, dissolve your ego. When you do karma, bhakti and jnana yoga, when you achieve excellence, there is this tendency to allow it to get to you and say, oh, it's mine. No, nothing is yours. Place your head and heart at the feet of the Lord. Constantly remember that it is God who has enabled you to do what you're doing. Because the moment you get egoistic, two things happen. You lose the capacity to even understand, to recognize. And number two, Brahman switches off, God simply switches off. And then you're in trouble. Thus, he says, with me as the supreme goal, you shall come to me. So let's get back to this verse, verse 34, where he puts the entire spiritual path in one verse. So, Karma Yoga, how does it start? Karma Yoga starts with the acknowledgement, first of all, awareness that you have received so much in life and that you are hopelessly indebted to some power you will never ever be able to repay. How can you repay? For all the things that you have received, for the oxygen that you have been breathing since the time you were born, isn't there a value to the fact that you have a heart that is functioning perfectly all these years? Kidneys, spleen, like Steve Jobs said, I didn't even know I had a spleen till I got cancer. Awareness of all the blessings that have been bestowed on you. And then you understand that you are in debt. And as Krishna says in chapter 3, those who enjoy the benefits that the system gives to you without so much as a thought of repaying is a thief. So we all belong to that category of thief because we are not even aware of all that we've received. So when you are aware, you feel this sense of indebtedness and your attitude changes from that of claiming rights to acknowledging duties, from a sense of entitlement to that of wanting to serve, just wanting to serve. You don't have to do anything. You know, in the book and in the movie Ultimate Gift, there's this billionaire who has died, and all his family members come not to pay homage to him, to find out how much he's left for them in his will. And all go back a little disappointed because they all get very little compared to his assets. And they wonder, where is the rest going? One grandson arrives late to the funeral and goes to the lawyer's office in utter disrespect. Puts his feet up on the table while he's talking to the lawyer. The lawyer says, "You're late." He says, "Yes. The old man didn't like me very much even during his life, and I don't expect anything from his assets." So the lawyer says, "You're wrong. He has kept something very special for you." And he plays a video of the grandfather talking. So what the grandfather has done is puts him to the test, and every time he passes one test, he gets a little money. So he sends him to some godforsaken place in Africa to do some work because he's never done work in his life. He's had everything coming to him. And when he catches a flight, he's used to a particular seat in first class. So he goes and sits there without even looking at his boarding pass. The crew member comes and says, "Sorry, sir, your ticket is back there. Economy." He's shocked, but what can he do? He has to go sit there. And that's how slowly the grandfather makes him understand the value of all that he has received. And he keeps getting money. So once he's got a check of $100 million in his pocket, and he's in the park, he sees a little girl suffering from cancer, and the mother trying her best to gather the finances and everything else to take care of this child. For the first time in his life, he thinks of someone other than himself. So he goes to the trustees of his grandfather's estate and says, "I have a project of starting a facility for poor children who are suffering from cancer and helping them. So I need from the estate $300 million. The project is of $400 million. So the trustee is asking, where are you going to get the other 100 million? He says, I'm giving it. You know what he's done? The entire $100 million that he has received from the grandfather's estate, he is pledging to do service. That moment, he gets the entire estate of the grandfather. This is it. Give, you gain. Grab, you lose. Bhakti, similarly, Bhakti and Jnana have outstanding results. Bhakti, reach out to a person with affection, forgiveness, understanding, and the result is fantastic. Even a dog understands. Even an animal, any animal understands affection. A cow, do you know that a cow yields maximum milk when the person who milks the cow approaches the cow with love? And now they connect the cow to machines for milking. How will you get the yield? They torture the cow. Similarly, jnana, the sharpness of the intellect, where you understand immediately what's happening. It's a clear intellect that gives you success. And the most important thing is, not only do you get material prosperity, not only are you happy, but the main thing, your desires reduce, you evolve spiritually. This is how he ends chapter 9. Tomorrow, we'll continue. For now, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We are hosting a special Guru Purnima webinar on Saturday, 24th July on the topic 3 Pathways to Personal Mastery. You can watch the webinar live on Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook. Please join us and encourage others to do as well. Register for free on our website, vedantavision.org. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow.